Hello friends, happy Monday. Welcome to this Monday's paint along. I'm so glad that you made it today. If you're new here, my name is Allie and I am a painting instructor. I specialize in teaching loose and bold, impressionistic style contemporary painting. And every Monday I've been coming to you live with a fun little paint along demo. So this Monday is the pine cone paint along. We've been doing this this fun holiday series that we're kind of kicking off. So I thought this would be a really fun one. If you are just jumping in, feel free to say hello in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. Tell us anything else you want to tell us. Let us know how your Thanksgiving was. It's always fun for me to go back through and see all those comments. So a little bit about how this works, because I know some of you are new. These demos are totally free to watch, but I also offer a download that has the outlines. So you can see I've got my panel ready to go here with the outlines on it. So if you're interested in purchasing the outlines, you can do that on my website, alliekstudio.com, and you'll get your 8x10 outlines that you can trace and get your panel ready. And you can always come back and watch this video again later. You don't have to paint with me live. So if you're just jumping in and you want to join me later, you can watch the live video now and you can do your painting later on. Hi Peggy in Georgia, and who else did I miss? I missed somebody else's comments. They were kind of going through quickly. All right, are you guys ready? Let's do it, okay? So here is what we are working on. There's the image that we are using, and I'm gonna give you a little view of my palette as well. That looks pretty good. We got Jacqueline in Ohio. Hi, Jacqueline. All right. Gotta pull up your comments on my screen so I can see you. Hi, Melissa. Melissa, I know you're in the UK, so it is late there. Oh, here we go. Who else? We've got Julie in Georgia and Debbie in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Welcome, everyone. All right. So I transferred my outlines using a transfer paper, and then I painted over them using my skinny script liner brush. And I made a purple from Payne's Gray, Alizarin Crimson, and Titanium White. I always like to make sure I tell you all that I am using golden fluid acrylics for this demo. And if you do purchase the outlines download for $10, that includes the list of the paints that I use. So you know which ones that you can go ahead and get if you want to be mixing the same colors that I am. But if you don't have those paints, that's fine too. You can totally watch the demo and work with what you've got. Hi, Kelly in Texas. Welcome, welcome. All right, so we are going to get started here with finding the shadows. So I'm getting my paintbrush wet here, and I always make a purple for the shadows with Alizarin Crimson and Payne's Gray. And I'm just going to water that down really well, get myself a nice soupy puddle of it here. And then I'm offloading my brush on the edge of my palette so that it's not too drippy. And then I can come back and just touch the tip of my brush to be able to control like how much is on my brush. So that's what we're gonna do. Hi, Laura in Kentucky. All right. So here we go. We're going to look at our outlines and decide which side of the outline is light and which side is dark. So I'm going to start up here at the top left, and I can see that the background is darker than the pine cone. So I'm just starting to wash in the background. So I'm just comparing which side's light, which side's dark, and I'm just giving this a nice little wash. So I have my paint super duper thin because I'm going to come back and do another wash. This is just kind of that first initial pass that's going to help to identify some of these shapes. And I'm not even worrying about, carrying this all to the edge. I'm really just looking at where those lines are and comparing light and dark. Hi, Sophia. Sophia says she loves my paintings. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Also, thank you, Judy, for sharing the demo. Judy's always the first one to share it, and I'm always very appreciative of that. And Judy, you also remind me to ask people if they would please share it, so I appreciate that too. Because as my children would say, I am extremely forgetful. But I think all of you moms out there can relate that we are forgetful because we're remembering like 10 million things most of the time. So, cut us some slack, kids. They usually don't. But anyways, I forget to ask you guys to share it, and I always appreciate when you do because that helps new artists and creatives to find my teaching and be able to join us. So, makes a big difference. All right, so I'm still just kind of working my way through here, looking at which side is light, which side is dark. Okay, let's go into the pine cone here. So I can see it's dark right here along the stem, and it gets dark here in the center. Kind of dark along the edge of that piece right there. And moving along. I have to apologize if you guys hear some talking in the background. I'm not sure if you can hear that or not. I'm in an art studio that has I'm in a building that has 40 different art studios in the building. And there's a studio next door to me that has some audio that's going very loud right now. So if you can hear that, I'm sorry, but I also want to tell you that I got myself a new microphone that I ordered today, and I'm pretty excited to implement that, which is going to make the audio for these live demos a lot better. So stay tuned on that. I'm stepping it up a notch for you guys because I want to give you the best experience I can. So I'm going to up my tech level here. All right, I'm not the super techie person, but I try to be because I do this for a living. All right. Plus, I feel like that's just part of life, right? We all do tech. It's just the way the world is these days and forevermore. All right, still just finding these shadows in between these little parts of the pine cone that are sticking out. I'm looking for like these easy areas to identify that I can tell are in shadow, and I'm painting around the highlights. And if you get a little bit confused in here, because I know there's a lot of parts to this pine cone, don't worry too much, because it's okay if your little pine cone, whatever these things are called, I don't know what these little parts are that stick out, but if yours aren't in the exact same places, that's okay. Let's see, Debbie says she doesn't hear the other audio. Wonderful, that's great, thanks Debbie. But either way, I am going to have my new microphone maybe by next week, we'll see. I gotta probably test that out before I start using it for my demos, but maybe I'll have that ready to go. All right, still just moving along here. Yeah. And I did not outline every single little shape in this pine cone. I always want to try to give a little bit of clarity as to what I decided to outline, because I want you guys to be able to, make your own paintings and make these choices for yourself, like what to include in your outlines when you're transferring them. So I looked for like the shapes that really stood out the most to me. Because if you try to outline every single part of the pine cone or every single little needle on the branch, it becomes so overwhelming that you don't really notice like what's important anymore. So I try to just outline the shapes that are going to really make it easy for you to identify what's what. So something to keep in mind when you're doing your own pieces and trying to, implement some of the skills and techniques that I'm teaching you. Because that's what it's all about, right? You want to be able to not only create cool paintings during these paint-alongs, but you want to be able to use what you're learning and keep creating with it and do your own stuff. I love seeing the work that you guys do in my group, Allie's Paint Friends. If you guys don't know, that's where everybody posts their paint-along pieces, but then also a lot of people post like work that they are inspired to create after doing some of the paint-alongs or some of my online courses, and that's always fun to see what that brings out of you. All right. Now, right in here, it's a little bit busy because we've got the pine cone shapes and then we've got these pine needles in front of it. And like, I didn't outline all those pine cone shapes because I didn't want it to get too busy. So I'm just gonna wash that in and we're gonna push that into shadow so that the pine needles are going to be what stands out at us. So as we move along, we're not going to put all those little detailed shapes in there because that's just too many things to include. Hi, Robin in Canada. Thanks for joining us. All right. So again, over here too, I'm just going to wash it in dark behind the pine needles. I'm not worrying about all those shapes in this other pine cone because it's just too much. We're going to kind of take that secondary pine cone out of focus so that we can keep more of the focus on this main pine cone. And that's, that's one of those artistic license choices you can make because you don't want your focus to be everywhere, that just makes things too much. All right. So something I'll point out right here, we left these pine needles as highlights. I'm gonna wash in maybe between here. But down here, I'm going to notice that the pine needles are actually darker than the background. So now I'm going to wash in the pine needle as the darker shape. Same thing right here. And I'm going to let the background be darker for some of these pine needles. I'm sorry, the background be lighter. So here I can see this one's kind of a dark one. I'll wash that in dark. We'll put some of these other ones in dark. It's kind of a mix and match. Some of the pine needles, like this one right here, is going to be a highlight. So I'm going to paint around that one to show that that one's a highlight. Same thing here. This one's a highlight right at the base. And this one's going to be a highlight, so we're going to paint in dark around it. We'll catch a couple of little dark ones here. And let's see, this one's going to be a highlight. We're going to wash in a little dark around that. So really paying attention, which side is light, which side is dark. Let's see, Robin's asking, is the purple Payne's Gray and Alizarin Crimson? Yes, it is, Robin. That's what I use for pretty much every piece I do when I wash in these shadow shapes in the beginning, because it just makes like kind of a nice duller purple that isn't going to be like too intense. So yeah, that's just Payne's Gray and Alizarin Crimson. All right, and I think we're just going to wash in around here and call that, we're going to call that first pass of color. We're going to call that done. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. All right, now I think I'm going to bring some of this color out into the background a little bit more. I need to make myself a little more of this purple tone. So again, Payne's Gray and Alizarin Crimson, watering it down, and going to just extend this out a little bit more. Kind of run it off the page in a few places. All right, that works. Just bring that out a little bit. All right. Okay, So now we're gonna come back with our second pass of this color. And the second pass we want to make a little bit darker. So we're going to use more Payne's Gray and more Alizarin Crimson so that there will be less water in it. And now we're going to come back and find the very darkest shapes here. So mixing it up, offloading my brush on the edge of my palette, and then I'm coming back with just the tip here so I can control it. And I'm going to look, where is it very dark? Well, I can tell it's very dark in the stem right here. And I can tell it's pretty dark right in the center where we've got these dark shadows painting around the highlights that are sticking out at us. There we go. And we've got this dark shape right here. And coming out on the other side. I'm using a number 3 brush right now. It's a little bit tricky to get into some of these smaller shapes, so you may want to go down to a number 1. And these are flat tip brushes. That's my brush of choice because it allows me to really show off my brush strokes. And these are Royal Langnickel brushes that I'm using. But I'm not really particular about brand. I just feel like it's important to have a nice tip on your brush. So if your brushes are starting to get kind of worn out, I say it's time for them to go. Get yourself some new brushes. And that's why I buy cheap brushes, because I would rather just toss them and get a brand new brush than spend a lot of money on brushes and feel like I need to keep them forever. Because even an expensive brush will definitely get worn out. And that makes a difference if you want to be showing the brush strokes. Now, if we were like blending everything, then I would say maybe it wouldn't matter as much. But it does matter when we want to have those brush stroke shapes really show off. So this part's taking a little bit longer than normal, I think, because we've got so many of these little dark shapes in the pine cone, but we're almost done here. We've got a dark shape underneath this one. And I know that I paint quickly, so if you need to spend a little bit more time on this, you know, remember, you can always watch that replay. So don't worry. I try to pack a lot into our 1 hour long classes because I don't want it to get boring, and I want to be able to teach you, you know, as much as I can in the time that we have every week. So don't worry if you need to give yourself a little bit more time. But sometimes I think it's maybe good to push yourself to go a little faster, because then you don't get too detailed and get too tedious with what you're trying to accomplish. You just get done what you can get done. I kind of discovered that when I started doing live painting at events and stuff, because I would only have a small amount of time to get my stuff done, and it was what it was, and I kind of liked that. I kind of liked that I didn't have the time to overthink things too much. There's something to be said for that. All right, now we've got some dark shapes in this one, but remember, we don't want to try to put all of those little details in. So I'm just going to drop a few little dark shadows in a couple of places, kind of a larger dark area right there that I'm going to put in, but not going to worry about getting them in the exact same places all that much, because it's not going to matter. All right. We'll put a little dark bit up here, maybe one right there. And I think I want to put a couple little pieces of dark over here. And then I want to push these dark shadows a little bit darker, because that's going to make that highlight really pop. So I'm just going to push the background a little bit darker just in that area. I'm not going to put it everywhere, maybe right here too. All right. And then we're just about done with this underpainting, kind of mapping out of shapes. A little bit right there. So this is kind of like our roadmap. This is like laying the groundwork so that as we bring in more color, we have a really good plan and we know where the shapes are and we can just be really confident in our brush strokes. So you want this layer to be dry. Mine's just about dry. I've got a couple little wet parts right there. And then I'm going to do a wash of a complementary color underpainting. So complementary means opposite on the color wheel. And so that means, like, for example, my background is going to be greens and blues, which are very cool. So I'm going to pick a warm color to wash in the background. And then the pine cones are showing up in this image pretty warm. So that means I'm going to start with a cool color for the pine cones. And so I think for the pine cones, I'm going to use phthalo blue green shade. Oh, actually, I already have it on there. I'm going to use that, and I'm going to grab a bigger brush to wash in this color. Find myself a larger brush. I'm just going to use my big number 9 for this. So I'm going to wet it down and get myself a little bit of this pretty phthalo green color. I've got some dried paint on my palette. All right. And I'm just going to wash right over the pine cones. So you want to make sure that you're not picking up any of that purple underpainting, because if you are, that will become a problem. And just wash it in. Don't worry about going like right over the pine cone. Let your brush strokes be loose and just have fun with it. Now, like this area where the green needles go in front of the warm pine cone, I'm not worrying about painting around those needles. That would just be silly. So we're just going to wash this in and call that a day. All right, good enough. Now, what color should we put in the background? I think I'm going to do 2 different colors in the background, just to kind of mix it up a little. So for some of it, I'm going to use Quinacridone Magenta, which is one of my most favorite colors from Golden. I'm going to wash that down, and I'm going to drop that into the background. I'm going to do that up here, not worrying if it kind of runs into my green a little bit. Totally fine. All right. Just gonna loosely drop that in. Now over here where the background gets really light, I'm gonna thin out my magenta a little bit to lighten it up a pinch. A little bit. All right. And like I said, I'm not going to put this magenta everywhere. I'm gonna mix it up a little. But I do want to drop some down here just to kind of show that it's continuing. So we'll just drop a little bit in right there. And then for the rest of it, I think I'm going to do my burnt orange recipe. So the color that I like to use most for burnt orange is Alizarin Crimson and Hansa Yellow Opaque. My Alizarin Crimson has a little bit of Payne's Gray in it, but I think it's going to be okay. So I'm going to mix those 2 together. Get myself a little more clean Alizarin Crimson, because I don't want that to be too contaminated. All right, this makes a really nice orange tone for an underpainting. And I'm going to drop that in on everything else. I want to be able to cover up all of my white. Don't want to have any more of the white. And that helps you to paint your paintings more quickly when you've got a wash down for an underpainting, because it just makes the painting feel more finished sooner. So that's one of the reasons why we do the underpainting. Another reason that we do the complementary color is because it's going to make the colors that we lay down on top of it, it's going to make them pop out and even more when they're contrasted by their opposite. So I get asked that a lot, like, why do you do this complementary color? That's the reason why. All right, so now our underpainting is complete, and we want to make sure that these colors are totally dry before we layer any more paints on top. So for the same reason when we washed in our shadows, we didn't want to be like picking up any of that color as we layered on top. So make sure yours is dry before you put anything else on top of it. And then now that we're done with the underpainting, now we're no longer going to mix our paints with water. Now I am mixing them with glazing medium. So I'm using Liquitex matte medium. You can use any brand, I'm not worried about that. But this is going to allow us to thin our paints, make them transparent, but they'll still keep like their heavier consistency. They won't get like runny and thin. So that's what I'm going to use. And I'm gonna squirt some out. Oh, mine's a little clogged here. Little tip, always have some nails on hand to be able to poke holes in your bottles that are clogged, because if you just squeeze them really hard, guess what happens? They will squirt everywhere. So that's what we want to do. And I am totally tempted to just squeeze it really hard, and then I am always mad that I did when it explodes. All right. So I think I've got that dry enough that I can start layering paint on top of it. So let's put some paint in the background right away, just to kind of cover up some of those really warm tones. I think I'm going to use my number 5 brush, and we're going to mix up kind of like a muted green for the background. So I'm going to start with the slightly darker areas in the background. Let's see, I'm going to make this green using phthalo green blue shade. But I want to dull it down a little bit, so I'm going to put some burnt umber in with it. So adding brown to a color, or I could add red, will automatically dull it down. And we always want to dull our greens down. Not always, but most of the time, because they'll just get like too intense and feel kind of unnatural. So we're going to start with that. I'm going to add a little glazing medium in there, and I think I'm going to drop a little bit of white in there too. Yeah, I like how that looks. So it was burnt umber light, phthalo green blue shade, some glaze, and some titanium white. I did not do a very good job with my palette here. I have all these little bits of paint that are coming off on me. I try to only scrape my palettes if I can like peel the paint out in one big swoop. You don't really want to leave like these little tiny flecks, because then they come off on your paint. Okay, so let's put this into the background. I'm not going to cover all of my magenta. I really want to leave some of that fun magenta poking through. So I'm gonna leave some spaces in between my brush strokes, but I'm just gonna start to cover up some of that background color and find some of these darker shapes of green in the background. So we'll drop some of that in. All right, I like to kind of leave like a little halo of that underpainting poking around like the outside edge. It's kind of fun. See how I'm like changing the direction of the brush strokes? All right. Bringing some around. Let's see, we'll bring it down here a little bit. And there's actually a lot of different colors going on in the background, but I don't think we need to make it quite so busy because our pine cone's pretty busy. So I think we're better off by maybe simplifying and calling the background, just more of like a green tone. Now the background down here is lighter and the needles are darker. So we can actually use this color to put some of those needles in. So I'm looking for the ones that I've already like shaded in a little bit darker. And I'm gonna use this color and just layer right on top of that. And I should tell you guys, if you have any questions, I am like looking back into the comments, so feel free to jump in there and ask away. and I will try to address it if I'm able to during the demo here. But otherwise, I do go back through all the comments after the demos and try to answer any questions I might have missed. But, you know, if there's anything you're wondering about this painting or just painting in general with this process, you're more than welcome to drop that into the comments. I also want to give a shout out to everyone who purchased online classes this weekend during my Black Friday sale. So many of you guys enrolled in some of my online courses, and I'm really happy for you, and I'm excited that you get to be a part of my color mixing workshop that's going to happen on December 14th. So that's a little bonus for everyone who buys a full online course during my Black Friday sale, which, by the way, is still going on through today. It's going on through tonight. So if you didn't know about it or you didn't get a class yet, you can head over to my website and find my 3 online courses are marked down. And if you get yourself enrolled tonight, by tonight, you get to be a part of that color mixing workshop. So pretty exciting. And thank you so much to all of you that already grabbed some classes. Well done. All right, I think we have enough of this color. So I'm gonna make this kind of lighter green tone. So I'm just gonna mix it in the same place here. I'm going to use phthalo green, but now I'm gonna add some yellow in there, and I'm gonna use that burnt umber light and white. So same colors as before, but now we have yellow in there as well. And I'm gonna do a little more burnt umber to add that in. Make that a little bit duller, because that phthalo green is just a crazy intense color. You have to dull it down or it's just too much. I'm gonna put a little glazing medium in there. All right, okay, so we're gonna layer this on top of, you see how it's kind of like overlapping some of those darker brush strokes? We don't need to worry about blending it in. We're just gonna lay it right on top of it and let our eyes do the blending. You don't need to actually blend it yourself. All right, moving along. Yeah, and you want to keep those strokes like random. You don't want it to look too mechanical. So if you're trying to, change directions, don't make it appear that you're doing that too intentionally. Try to make it look like it's just happening. Hopefully that's not confusing. All right, yeah. Now I'm kind of painting in between some of these needles and just kind of getting some of that background color in between, but still leaving those little halos of that warm tone, because that's really going to make the green pop. All right, and I think I can use some of this green to put some of these highlighted needles in that are showing up right here. So I'm turning my brush on its side to be able to get it skinnier. That's what I like about these flat tip brushes. You can lay them down this way and get a nice flat, fat stroke, or you can turn it on its side and get a pretty nice, clean, skinny stroke. So they are very versatile. These lovely brushes. I'm gonna put some in here. Yeah, and I'm definitely simplifying some of these green colors. Some of them I'm not seeing that are exactly this color, but like I said, because we don't want it to be just too many colors or too much, we're just kind of simplifying. It's all about simplifying. All right, that looks pretty good. Now, since we're still working on the background, I think you see how it's like really cool over on this left side? There's like these cool windows of light that are poking in between those needles. So we want to make a new cool green, and I'm going to move to a new spot because we're going to make this cool green a little bit differently than we made our warm green. So the cool green, I'm going to use white, and I'm going to use the phthalo green blue shade. But but I'm also gonna put a little bit of Payne's Gray in there and maybe just a speck of that brown to dull it out a little bit. A little more Payne's Gray. Yeah, and then I'm gonna put some of my glazing medium in. Maybe a pinch more white, because that's pretty light in between those sections. All right, so just to review, this was Payne's Gray, Phthalo Green Blue shade, Burnt Umber Light, and white. And this is going to go in between some of these little needles that we've already put in. So I'm looking for these little windows of light that I see between the pine needles. And we don't want to make all the little windows look like exactly the same, just like we don't want to make all our other brush strokes look the same. So we're really kind of changing it up a little bit. Let's see. We've got some little bits that are picking up over here. So we've got the branch going through right here, which is kind of dark, but there are these little windows of light that are popping around over here. And maybe even up here a little bit. Now we can also use this color to put a few of the highlights in on some of the needles, like this one. This needle's pretty bright. What else? We've got a pretty bright one coming down there. We've got, let's see, there's some of these that swoop up are kind of bright, catching a highlight on there. And these needles that are overlapping the pine cone, they're going to show up better once we make this pine cone more that warm tone. Right now they kind of blend in because the pine cone is still the underpainting color, but we will we'll take care of that later on. All right, put a little highlight maybe on these needles that swoop up. And yeah, I think we're gonna be done with that for right now. Maybe a little bit of this in the background up here and on some of those needles. Okay, pretty good. We're gonna be done with that for right now. Now I want to go back to my warm tone of green and lighten up this area of the background. So if you still have some of that puddle over there, we're just gonna add some white to it and a little more yellow to lighten up that other warm puddle that we were working with. I'm gonna put a little glazing medium in there and we'll drop that in. See how that's now a notch brighter than our other mid-tone green? So we're just like working in this gradient of steps. We're just gradually getting it brighter as we drop this in, and we definitely wanna leave that fun magenta poking around in there. Don't cover all that up. All right, that is sufficient right there, I think. I think we're gonna put a little bit of this in the background here too. Yeah, just to bring some of that tone in, maybe down here as well. Okay, that works. All right. So let's get to those pine cones now. Let's put some color in there. All right. So let me know if you guys have any suggestions for any other holiday paint-alongs that you want to see happen. I was working on what we're going to do. Oh, I know what we're going to do next week. We're going to do an ornament paint-along next week. I do have one ornament paint-along from last year that has been really popular, but I came up with a new one that I'm going to teach you next week, Monday, so I'm excited for that. Okay, so let's make this warm tone. We're going to do that using Pyrrole Red Light, and I gotta find a clean spot here. Is this clean? Nope. Okay. Pyrrole Red Light, Hansa Yellow Opaque, a little bit of Burnt Umber Light. I need to get myself some fresh burnt umber because mine's contaminated. Burnt Umber Light and some white. And this also happens to be the same 4 colors I use when I paint skin, in case you were wondering. That is my 4-color skin recipe. And it doesn't even matter what color of skin it is. That's usually what I use. Okay, so it's kind of like this orange tone. I'm gonna put a little glazing medium in there. And we're gonna start dropping this. You know, I need a little more burnt umber. I need to dull it down just a little. It was a little too orange. All right, there we go. Okay, so we're going to start putting this color into the pine cone. So this is kind of more of a shadow color because the highlights of the pine cone get pretty bright, right? So we're gonna start dropping this into some of the shadows. I'm gonna switch down to a smaller brush because I have this number 5, which is way too big for what I'm trying to do right now. So I'm gonna go back to my number 3, I think, and see how that works for me. All right, and yeah, that'll be better, I can tell. And again, don't cover up all of the green. It can be tempting, I know, but we want to leave little bits of it so that we can contrast these nice warm tones that we're putting in. So do your best to hold off and not cover up all that green. Oh, I was also going to tell you guys, so next week is going to be the ornament paint along. And if you are on my email list, I have not done this before, but you guys on my email list, you are going to get, you're going to get that download for free next week. Because I know that if you are on my email list, you got a lot of emails from me over the last few days, and I just want to say thank you for sticking around and letting me clog up your inbox a little bit with all my Black Friday deals. So as a little thank you, I'm going to send you next week's download for free. So thank you very much. I have the best friends on my email list. So thought that would be a fun little bonus I could give you. All right. Just moving along with this color. And then we'll come back and lighten it a little bit and pull out some of those highlights a little bit further. Again, make sure you are not getting too obsessed with getting all these little pieces in the exact same place. Just kind of get the essence of what we've got going here. Yeah, you're welcome to everyone who is saying thank you. I'm happy to share that with you guys. You guys are very loyal, and I appreciate it very much. So, thought that would be fun. And if you thought you were on my email list and you were like, hey, wait a minute, I didn't see any emails from you, make sure you check your junk folders because you never know, some of those emails might be getting lost. And if you do want to make sure you get emails from me, make sure you mark me as a safe person to send you emails because I've got good stuff to send you. I try not to overwhelm you, only stuff that you are going to want. All right, we're almost done with highlights on this guy right here. And then we're gonna move to the other one that is in the background here. Because these areas, I'm gonna leave this open because this is all really bright. So we're gonna come back and put that in later. So we're gonna move over to this one. We're gonna drop some into the spaces in between these needles. And not getting too detailed here, just kind of letting that one blur out in the background a little bit. Put a little chunk here and there. All right. Almost done with this one, and then we can come back and put those brighter highlights in. Yeah, looks pretty good. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to add a little more white to this. So we're just going to go in, scoop a little bit of white, lighten that up a little bit. That's going to also make it a little bit more opaque and that's fine because we want this to stand out a little bit more. Let's see. Jacqueline says, you get a download and you get a download, Oprah. I love it. Everybody gets a download. Well, everybody who is on my email list gets a download. Everyone who has gotten lots of emails from me the last few days. All right, here we go. So we're going to add this in. Yeah, I want to be like Oprah someday. That would be pretty great. All right, yeah, so these highlights really make these stand out. Kind of paying attention to the edges. You know, I do want them to look kind of rounded, like the shape of whatever these little chunks are that are part of the pine cone. Maybe somebody could figure that out and tell us in the comments if there's an actual term for what those are, and then I could call them correctly, but I don't know. I'm just gonna call them little chunks. All right. And I'm gonna switch to a smaller brush. I'm having some trouble getting in there. I think I'm gonna go down to my number 1. I recommend you guys might wanna do that too, just to get a little more specific with these highlights, because we want these to be pretty well placed. All right, yeah, that's gonna be a little easier. And I didn't mention, you know, as I'm going through this, I'm kind of chipping away at those outlines that I placed. So if you can still see some of those outlines, this is where you want to just be able to go right over those so that those aren't going to be showing up, because those were really just there as a guide. And we want those to kind of disappear. Let's see. Janet says, I can't make a comment. I see your comment, Janet. You're good. Sorry if you're having any technical difficulties, but we see your comment. Let me know what's on your mind if you've got anything you want to chat about. All right. Putting the highlight on here. Yeah, this is starting to make it feel a little bit more like a pine cone. Oh, Melissa says they're called scales. Thank you, Melissa. You guys are the best. All right. Now, hopefully we can all remember when we're talking about scales, that's what we're talking about. Good to know. All right. So you can see how I'm being kind of loose as these highlights dissolve into the shadow, but when it comes to like identifying the edge of the scale, I'm being more specific about that. And that, I will say, is very similar to the way I would approach the petals of a flower. So I kind of am loose as it dissolves into the shadow, but we want to kind of shape up the petals or the scales in this case and make those be identifiable. So that's where I'm paying attention to those edges. Melissa says, talking of scales, you can do some fish. Yeah, that is one that I've been thinking about doing, Melissa. I think that fish would be really fun. Although I can't say that I have ever painted a fish. I'm sure I have, but I can't think of one right now. That doesn't mean I can't paint a fish. I can paint anything, and so can you guys. It doesn't matter what the thing is that you're painting. You just use the techniques that you know, and it's always going to turn out. It's going to be great. Okay. So we got a good amount of highlights on this one. We're going to make our highlights become even brighter, but we're going to move over to the one in the background here and get some color on that. In between these needles. And I'm definitely being less specific in the background here. So I'm not making the scales in the exact same place because it doesn't really matter. We're just gonna drop a little bit of highlight in there, but not too much because we don't want to take away from the needles. So yeah, I think that's good right there. Okay, and you know, there's a couple of needles here that are a little bit dead, and I think I'm gonna use this brown color, tan color to put it on those because I think that's gonna give it some kind of fun unity there. So yeah, just gonna drop a little bit in there too. All right, moving along. Now we wanna go even brighter with this highlight. So we're going to put more white in there. It's okay that my white's a little contaminated because I've already browned out this color. So whenever you're mixing like a neutral and you've already put brown in it, it doesn't really matter if your other colors are a bit contaminated because brown is the color that is always contaminated because it has both sides of the color wheel. All right, so let's go and make it even brighter still. We're not going to put this highlight everywhere because we don't want to get it too busy. We're just looking for where we see the brightest, which is kind of along the edges here. And I kind of work my way from the middle out. You might have noticed that. I'm not saying like the middle of the painting, I should clarify. I'm talking about like the middle value. So we kind of had like midtones and now we're pushing towards the brighter values. And then I'll probably also push some of the darker values a little bit darker. So as the painting progresses, we kind of start with a whisper and we move our way towards a shout once we know where everything is. And that is a way that I approach pretty much all of my paintings. Kind of start in the middle and figure it all out, and then you can really shout at the end with the brightest highlights and the darkest darks. Now down in here, these highlights aren't as bright, so I'm not gonna worry about those. We're gonna put some of these real bright ones over here in the background. A couple of those. Not too many. We'll put a little bit up here. And yeah, that works. Yeah. Now I see like some blue light kind of sparkling around these pine cones, and so I want to add that little bit of pizzazz in there because we're getting towards the end of the painting. So I like to put those kind of blue sparkles in closer to the end. So I'm going to get myself some clean white because I don't want this white to be contaminated at all, or it's going to dull down my blue. And then I'm going to get some phthalo blue green shade, which is another super duper strong color from Golden that I love. And I hardly need any of it. So I just squirted out a tiny little bit, but I think that's all I'm gonna need. Find a clean spot on my palette. And we're gonna put this nice blue sparkle in here. Get a little more of that blue. All right, let's have some fun with this one. So I see some in the background there and kind of coming in right there. Got some over there. This is just gonna be kind of dancing around, looking for some of these cool tones coming in the background. Put it on some of these needles. It's jumping around in between the needles over here. And yeah, we're just gonna have fun. Now I can tell that I really do need to push some of my darkest dark shadows a lot darker. So we just kind of washed those in before and we need to give those a push. So the color we're going to use to make that dark is, let's see, we're gonna do Payne's Gray, and we're going to do Alizarin Crimson. We're just gonna do those two, I think. Because that makes it pretty, it's like a dark purple, but I think that'll be really nice. We could add a little bit of green to make it like more of a black, but I think this is gonna work. So let's drop that in where we see the very darkest shapes. So that is on the branch here, but we still wanna make sure we leave some of that underpainting poking around, so don't like fill everything in. Leave some little halos of that magenta. But you can see where by doing this, it makes those highlights, the needles that are in highlight, it makes them pop out by pushing those darks, creating that contrast. And you can also use it to kind of clean up some of the edges of the scales of the pine cone. If maybe your edges got a little bit rough and wonky, this, you can kind of trim them off a little bit by putting some of this dark tone in. Yeah, we've got some of these real dark shapes here. I don't have any glaze in this mixture because I actually want this to like lay down pretty opaque. I really want it to lay down nice and solid so that we get a really nice dark in there. So that's what I'm thinking as I put this color down. Some dark over there. Yeah, that's making it pop. I like that. Let's see, thank you, Maria. All right. If anybody is just joining us, I want to tell you my little announcement. Next week we're doing an ornament paint along. And if you're on my email list and you let me jam up your inbox this weekend with a whole bunch of emails about my Black Friday sale, as a little thank you, I'm giving you the download for next weekend's paint along for free. So just want to make sure you guys know about that. I'm really excited for that. And you can also get the ornament paint along from last year. You can find that on my website if you haven't gotten that one yet. You might like trying that one out. It's a little bit smaller. It's an 8x8. Last year I was doing the holiday series on 8x8 panels, so that one's a little smaller, but it's really fun. I really like that one. All right, I think that's a good amount of these dark shapes here. And now I'm just gonna kind of go back through and figure out what some of the finishing touches are that I want to add in here. I see like almost bright white on this left side here, and I think I want to pop that in. So I'm going to get my brush really clean, and I'm going to dump a whole bunch of white into my phthalo blue mixture that I had here before. Remember we did those phthalo blue highlights? I'm going to dump a bunch of white into that so that it's going to be almost straight white, but it's just going to be tinted a little bit with the phthalo blue. And we're going to find those very brightest highlights now. All right, so they're definitely over here on the left side. Yeah, and these are like nice and cool, so they're gonna stand out. So we're just gonna pop these super bright areas in, maybe a little over there, a little bit over there. This isn't going everywhere, just a few places, just to keep it interesting. Mix it up a little. Yeah. I'm squinting to be able to identify like what are the simple shapes that I really need to stick in there. And now I also want to put some of this bright tone in down here in the little windows of light that are shining between the needles in a few places, because I can see it's really bright down here. And we're just going to pop that in to make it a little bit brighter there. Not all of them, but just a couple of them. It'll help to show that off. Yeah, I like that. All right. Let's see. I think we're missing some of the background color. It's almost like this purple that's kind of floating around in the background, and I haven't really done that, and I think that would be kind of nice. So I think maybe that'll be like one of the last things I add to this is to bring in some of that purple. So we're gonna make that purple using Phthalo Blue green shade and Quinacridone Magenta and white. I told you guys last week, but maybe you didn't know about it. My favorite purple, which is Permanent Violet Dark, has been unavailable for a while from Golden, but I heard that it's coming back, which I'm really excited about. So right now, if you can't get Permanent Violet Dark, you can make it by doing this recipe of the Phthalo Blue and Quinacridone Magenta. So that's what I've been doing in the meantime, but I've heard that it's going to be coming back within the next few months, which is very exciting. All right, so we've got purple. We're going to add some white to it, maybe a little more blue. Kind of a blue purple. Yeah, I like this color. Okay, so this nice dark tone, even though it has white in it, it's still kind of a dark tone. We're gonna drop into some of this background where we still have maybe a lot of that that orangey color poking through. So we're gonna cover up some of that with this. Yeah, just kind of feeding that into the background, just giving a little variation. I like that. It just makes it, I don't know, does something fun there. And yeah, I think I'm gonna add a little more white to it, vary that up a little bit. And maybe a little more of the magenta. Yeah, so we're gonna make a little bit more of a warmer, lighter purple. Just vary that up a little. And I'm gonna grab a different size brush because that number 1 is too small to make shapes in the background. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. There we go. That's fun. Maybe I want to put a little of this in the pine cone. Nah, I don't know. You guys can decide if you want to do that. I can't decide. I think I need just a few more needles down here. I kind of got rid of all my needles. So I'm going to make just a nice cool dark green, and then we're going to call this demo done. So we're going to do that cool dark green with phthalo green and some white and some Payne's gray. Yeah, phthalo green, white, Payne's gray. That's what we're going to do. And then we will just bring back some of these needles that got kind of lost. So it's like push and pull, you know, we added in like the background shapes, and then that kind of got rid of some of the foreground needles, and so then we're gonna like just bring some of them back. And you can decide how many you want to do. Yeah, I like this color. This is good. Yeah, we had just lost too many of them. And you know, this is again where nobody's really gonna like compare it to the, nobody's gonna compare it to the reference image. So you do what works for you. You do what you like. And that's what's fun about painting. One of the many things that's fun about painting, but you get to be in control and just make your painting the way you want it to look. But don't overdo it. Remember to step back and take a look at it before you overdo it. I want to brighten this one a little bit. So I'm going to go back with a little more yellow, even though I know I told you I was done. I'm going to put a little yellow into my recipe and some white and just add a few bright tips there. Just to warm up and make these tips kind of glow. Yeah, ooh, that was a little too fat of a brush stroke. That's fine. Yeah, those little tips need to sparkle. You see that? Don't make your brush strokes as fat as what I'm doing. I did that too much. But it's okay. We can always trim it down. I won't have time during this demo, but maybe I'll do it when I come back to this. Yeah, see how it pulled those out? Maybe one right there. Ah, there we go. These little tiny bits at the end that make it work. Into a little bit right there. Okay, I gotta be done, otherwise I'm gonna overdo it. I'm gonna cut myself off, which sometimes you guys need to do too, so. Yeah, thank you guys for hanging out with me through this demo, and I am excited to bring you another demo next week. And remember to check your email. You'll probably get an email from me tomorrow with the, hopefully tomorrow, with the Paint Along download for next week. So have a great night. Don't forget you have until midnight tonight to enroll in one of my 3 online courses, and then you will get an invite to the live color mixing workshop on December 14th. You'll also get a link to the replay. So head over to my website, lekstudio.com, if you haven't already, and grab one of my classes. Have a great night. I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.